Hello students, welcome to your science class. We are learning chapter 9, Living Organisms, Characteristics and Habitat of your NCERT science textbook. We have almost reached the end of this chapter, but there is a lot of more content and concept you can explore about this chapter. No matter how much you learn about nature environment, you will always fall short in learning new concepts about this environment and life. Some science facts to know for today are: do you know ants are living creatures which will never sleep? Human teeth are the only part which cannot repair themselves. That is why it is very important we suggest you to brush your teeth twice a day. Human bones are about 5 times stronger than steel. Elephants have the largest brain, which is 1% of the total body mass. And the list goes on. The main contents of this chapter are: we have seen a brief introduction to this chapter where we understood what are living and non-living things. The organisms and the surroundings where they live, grow and die is the habitat of that organism. We learned the meaning and definition and concept of habitat, their types and adaptations. We have gone through a journey of few terrestrial and aquatic habitats. In the previous classes, we learned what are the characteristics seen in living organisms and how they are common to all. Characteristics. It is very important word to analyze one's profile. Characteristics of living things help us to classify and describe organisms, their functions, how species came into existence, and the interactions they have with each other and with natural environment. Characteristics of living things. They need food, they grow, they excrete, they reproduce, they respire, they move, they respond to stimuli. These are the major characteristics we learnt in this chapter. They require food for nutrition for the body. They grow as they age. They excrete to remove waste products. They reproduce to continue their kind or race to be in existence. They respire to break down and utilize energy from food. They show movement for several activities. The living things, they respond to the stimuli using all the senses of their body. So these are the characteristics of living things. Though all living organisms bring life to earth, though all of them possess these characteristics, only some of them have common of all these characteristics, which are expressed in similar manner or behavior. It is different for different species and sometimes different for every individual. These characteristics are expressed based on their living and life stages. We discussed that living organisms grow because they age. But why do they age? Because all living organisms have a life cycle in which the entire story lies between birth to death. Yes, one more common characteristic seen in living beings is that they die. All living beings are mortal. Some have a lifespan of minutes to some having a lifespan of thousands of years. In this process of life cycle, many organisms survive to reproduce their own kind to continue their race. Even the living organisms can die without reproducing during their lifespan, but only if they reproduce there are high chances of their kind or race to be in existence. If any kind or race or that species stop reproducing, there ends the race of that species. So, one more common characteristic of living organisms that is added to the list is all living organisms grow and die. All these characteristics are shown by living organisms, maintaining proper balance and association with the non-living things. But students, do we find non-living things showing these characteristics? We already discussed that they move by an external force. Some such examples are water moving in the river, clouds growing in size, etc. Like bus, car, bicycle, etc. moving. These characteristics are not the same to those which we have discussed that are seen in living things because they cannot move by themselves, they cannot grow, they cannot develop, they cannot breathe or respire, they cannot make food or utilize food, they do not need food, and they cannot reproduce. Non-living things may show those characteristics, but their mechanism is totally different. And though they show some characteristics of living things, but not all can be seen. Not all the characteristics can be seen. If only all the characteristics of the living things which we have discussed are seen, can be declared as a living being. But there is always a question that all living things show all the characteristics? Really? There is never a sure answer to this question because there is always a hunt of discoveries and research in this regard. We can prove that by considering few examples. The pulses stored in your kitchen or in a shop do not show these characteristics. But how can you say that it is a living thing or a non-living thing? Because the pulses are the seeds. We said that a seed can grow into a plant. That means a seed can also be a living thing. But does these pulses or seeds in your kitchen or a shop show all the characteristics of respiring, showing growth, and reproducing? No, right? It does not grow, it does not reproduce, it does not show any movement. It resembles a non-living thing. But how can you say a seed is living? To prove that, if you sow that seed in soil and water it for few days under proper conditions, it turns into a whole plant. It now shows all the characteristics of a living organism as a plant. That means the seed is also living. But it is difficult to prove the same in all cases. There are some situations where you cannot easily say that a thing is living. Then how do we prove it? What actually is life then? How can you describe it? Unless and until you bring the seed to life by sowing it in the soil, can you say it is living? Maybe yes, we can prove that also. Try to put your hand in a wheat sack or a rice bag. You can feel some warmth or heat. It means the seeds respire in this process under their shelf life. That is why you can categorize seeds to be said as living things. Respiration is a process that takes place in seeds even when some other life processes like reproducing, growing or developing, etc., may not be very active. This is the case that can be considered as an example to say that not all characteristics are always common and witnessed in living things. Looking at all these things, learning such interesting facts, and seeing such diverse things of living beings surrounded by non living beings, and maintaining the balance of the earth and existence of numerous species, we can conclude that life is beautiful. Yes, life is beautiful. Here we finish this chapter. Thank you all.